Shiban felt the earth beneath his feet sway, his moorings cut loose, his blade fall from his grip. He fell to his knees, crashing heavily into the corrupted swill. For a moment he saw nothing at all, just an infinity of blackness, extending in all directions. It felt as if a cold claw had reached into his chest and wrenched both his hearts out, dragging all hope and ambition and life with it. He heard cries ring out across the battlefield, unlocked howls of disbelief and horror, and dimly realized that every white scar across every rotten chamber and miasmatic cavern was experiencing what he was experiencing. A warrior of the legions was not just an inducted soldier, given the Emperor's coin and handed a bolter. He was connected through warpcraft and gene tech to his primogenitor, indelibly linked both temperamentally and psychically to the archetype. The bond was more than loyalty, more than filial duty. It was everything. He wanted to vomit. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw his head back and empty that unbearable grief out, up at the shrouded stars. But he was also a Khan of the Ordu, the one the others looked to, the carrier of the flame.
You are Taxir. You are the restorer.
It could not go on. He could not indulge himself. He forced himself to stand again, shakily, and opened his eyes. It was as if the night around him had become as black as bloody pitch, more hateful than ever, emptier and colder. He took up his blade again, ramming it firmly aloft, just as he had done when the Kargan had breached the first wall, when his ecstasy had been as profound as his loss was now.
Damarg!
He roared. That word had only one meaning in Korchin. It only had one sacred use. Death. Not the death of old age or sickness, but the death of the fighter, slain in battle against an enemy. The death that had to be avenged, lest destruction overcome all things. That grief curse had been heard on the grasslands of Chigoris since the time before memory, a paean of defiance and honor and fealty, one that every sword-bearer knew and understood and venerated. They had cried it aloud when Giahan had died, when Chinja had died, when Yasugai had died, and now they cried it for the greatest of them all.
Damarg!
Shiban thundered again, his powerful voice hurling the denunciation out through vox emitters at full stretch, striding out fearlessly now, heedless of any danger, no longer with the exuberance of that first vivid attack, but with slow, terrible deliberation. All around him, white scars looked up, heard their homeworld's ancient tongue ringing in the vaults, and reached for their blades again. Damarg! Now the curse echoed darkly from the cracked walls, issuing first from a dozen mouths, then 100 mouths, then 1,000. It fell into a terrible rhythm. They mouthed it in unison, again and again, uttering nothing else now, no longer holding to cover, but coming out openly, fists clenched tighter than adamantium, hearts bursting with a loathing that went beyond expression.
Damarg!
The enemy never responded. They had always been silent in combat, almost oblivious to those they fought, but now they stared in a stupor at those coming towards them, the unified presentation of utter loathing, utter resolve, utter commitment. The warp, orchestrated so perfectly by their master, was draining away from every chamber like a flood, surging out through shattered walls and spilling out over the plains beyond. Where their opponents were now suddenly animated with this terrible cold-as-ice fury, their own resolve had been ripped away from them without warning. The remaining Terran armored units began to operate again, their confused commanders knowing better than to ask what was going on, only that they still had their duty, and that something astonishing was happening to those they fought with. Targeting lumens flickered on, engines powered up, long barrels swung once more towards their targets. Shiban barely noticed. Those he marched with barely noticed. Their only focus was ahead, to the ones who had done this thing, and who now would be punished. They strode into the open, the sons of the great Khan, exposed to the return fire that came sporadically now. Shiban reached up to his helm, released the seals, twisted it off, and locked it to his armor. All those with him did the same. As one, they reached up with their blades, placed them against the ridged tissue on their cheeks, and drew the edge down. Fresh blood ran freely across their exposed skin as the old scars opened. They breathed in the toxic air and relished its bitterness. They fixed their gaze at the ranks of the enemy, and each one of them, in a movement of such perfect coordination that it might have been ordained since the dawn of time, angled a bloody blade towards the chosen target. When their final great roar came, it made the caverns themselves shake, the waters tremble, the iron crack, and the glass shatter.
Damarg!
And then they were charging, driven only by their unbounded hatred, sweeping across the ruins in a tide of ivory and gold and crimson, unstoppable, unrestrained, the lords of the storm, the merited vengeance of heaven, the bringers of death.